Good afternoon, Freddie Vasquez here with Basement Politics Unfiltered. I want to do a special. Let's go outside of Yonkers a bit here and talk about the George Floyd and BLM documentary that came out. Good afternoon, folks. I'm Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered. Tonight, or this afternoon, the George Floyd case, the impact on Black America and all America, right? Good afternoon, folks. I'm Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered. This afternoon, I wanted to come on and do a special about the George Floyd case and the impact on, I put Black America, but I want to say all America, really, and I should have said that. But I'll tell you why I said Black America in a minute. I want to show some video also from a documentary that was produced by Candace Owens, right? And at first, I want to say I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. Not. I want to simply show information that maybe you didn't hear about or see. I know I didn't hear some of this information, such as the coroner's report, such as the drugs that were actually found in the back of the police car. And I'll tell you why that's important, as well as video from the body cam of one of the officers showing police officer Derek Chauvin, who was convicted of murdering George Floyd, showing him with his knee and where it was actually positioned. And so there's some, anomalies or some contradiction with the coroner's report and what's being said in the media. And I wanted to talk about this because, the media and Kanye West have been going at it, and people are talking all about this on social media. A lot of people are supporting Kanye, but there's people that think Kanye's crazy. But he's talking about how the media perpetuates lies and will create a story depending on what they want, what outcome it is that they want, and it's controlled by he's saying a certain group of individuals, and he's going with that whole thing. But I want to show some stuff here from this documentary and really kind of just support him and how the media lies, and other people who say this, and how the media creates a false narrative many times for their agenda, right? And I'm going to show you this. And again, I'm not trying to convince you. I always encourage people to look at all the information. There's no reason why you should just take what's being told on CNN or Fox News at face value. You cannot do that anymore. And you most certainly cannot get your information from Facebook memes. That's not facts. And I've had people try to prove me wrong with a Facebook meme. I don't get it. Folks, I want to show you just the beginning here of the media and how they kind of, they will go after you if you don't, go with the mainstream narrative. And so this is kind of what they were saying about Candace Owens initially when she didn't agree with the mainstream narrative on George Floyd.
This video was just so disgusting, but I think it's important to understand how easily people can be corrupted into saying this type of disgusting nonsense.
Candace Owens, that rotten bitch.
If anybody's going to pretend to get their feelings hurt about what we say about Candace Owens, I will laugh and laugh and laugh.
I don't care what this did. I don't care if it personally kick Candace Owens and her stinky pussy.
Oops. Excuse me, I was trying not to play that part. But the point I want to show that is that, it's interesting how certain individuals, can be attacked. People can go on the media and talk poorly about them. I know he's a comedian, Chappelle, but he's saying he wants to kick her in her private, and people are just saying all kinds of crazy stuff, and that's okay. But if you say something about other individuals, then you're labeled racist, anti-Semite, like I've been lately, because I just I don't know, it was really anything anti-Semitic. I was simply stating that Ron Matten was Jewish, and I didn't understand why he would support Adolf Hitler, and I was called anti-Semitic for that. So things are always thrown around, without really having any basis to it. So I wanted to show that on how the media just jumped on Candace Owen. And listen, you don't have to like her. I'm not saying I like her or support her. I do agree with certain points she makes, right? Because I'm all about actually truth. That's what I'm here for. Truth telling, wherever that may lead us. So I want to move on now and start getting into it. But it's very interesting because think about this. They said he was killed because the officer had his knee on his neck. But according to the coroner's report, the medical examiner's report, he didn't have any injuries to his neck. That's strange. Because if you're having your knee on someone's neck for 10 minutes, causing that person to suffocate to death, there surely will be injuries to the neck. But there weren't. And there were some other things that were mentioned in the autopsy report that indicate he may have died of something else. So let me just get into it now. This is a video, BLM. They talk about why people may have wanted this to be, told the way it is, why this narrative that the official story is being told this way. And it's because there's some special interest groups that want to exploit George Floyd's death, unfortunately.
With his face, just his face, or saying you had some association with him, could have gotten, garnered a lot of people money. Do you think that people took advantage of him?
Yeah, it's like they use it.
By the way, these two individuals that he's talking to are George Floyd's roommates. They were his roommates for about 5 to 6 years before he passed away. So he was living with them up until he passed away.
As what you say, a way of funding whatever they motivation was. And then at sometimes when I went to the George Floyd Memorial, it was different individuals going around there and saying donations for this, for Floyd, for this. And
Yeah.
you didn't know where they was coming from. You got a little metal box and I don't know who you are. Where is this going?
To meet with the president and the vice president, and for them to show their concern to our family, and for them to actually give an ear to our concerns and how we feel on the situation.
I have to be strong because that's what he would want me to do.
I ain't never met a sister. I ain't never met a brother. None of them ever came here. And Floyd been living in this house. We've been in this house going on 6 years, am I right?
Yeah. But for the 4 years, no. He just...
They never wanted his stuff. I mean, I would think that if my
they didn't
son,
even come and look and see where the man lived at. They never came to see where Floyd lived. They never came and get none of his stuff. Nothing.
That was my oldest brother. I love him.
So what they're saying here is that, was the politicians, specifically like the Democrats, right? The president taking advantage of this situation, trying to utilize and exploit this to gain support, to create division among individuals in this country and Trump supporters, to stir up problems, to stir up conflict. Out of this came BLM. Black Lives Matter was super huge. Black Lives Matter protests all over. Billions of dollars of private property was destroyed. People died in these protests. And BLM generated a lot of money. A lot of money. None of it went to the Black community. And in fact, about $92 million of it went to Joe Biden. That's a fact. A lot of it went to individuals within the Democratic Party during their elections. So they're saying was this, BLM just exploiting his death, raising money. And as we've seen recently, the so-called founders of BLM were being criticized or even, accused of stealing money, buying properties all over the world, literally, in the Bahamas, in Calabasas, places where black people didn't even live, right? So were they really, there for the family? Was the family even really there for George Floyd, or more for their own benefit? Because as the roommate said, they didn't even go back to collect his stuff. They never came and got his stuff. They never met his family. And so, they're indicating that maybe how much did they care? I want to play a little bit of just that they go over his past, his criminal past. And this is not to try to make him look bad. This is just to give a overall picture, put everything into context, get all the information, right? That's important.
Guys, it was just absolutely amazing. You imagine how absolutely traumatized that child was. And then you think to yourself, just a few years later, and you will have children that are wearing his shirt, referring to him as a hero, as some sort of savior, right? That's wrong. It's not right at all. And it was this case that I couldn't stay quiet on, and I had to make that video.
In 1998, he spent 10 months in prison for theft with a firearm. In 2002, he spent 8 months in prison for a cocaine offense. In 2004, just 2 years later, he spent another 10 months in prison for a cocaine offense. By the way, I am not...
So I wanted to show that because I want to say that I just wanted to make the point that, when I said the impact on Black America, and, I should have said America, but why I said Black America is because as a Hispanic, and I have Black kids, my kids are Black, my wife is Black, many of my best friends were Black and Hispanic and all colors. I have all races, whatever, right? I get along with everybody, right? I don't agree with this either. I'm from the hood, okay? I grew up in the hood. I grew up around mostly Hispanics and Blacks, but mostly Hispanics. I was born in prison. My mother was incarcerated when I was born. I spent my first 8 months in a women's facility, prison facility, crying, getting my diaper changed. I could only imagine, how that affected me. And, did I get any love and stuff like that? My mother would never really talk to me about it. Something that, still just kind of kept quiet. But the point I'm making is that I grew up, in a very rough environment. I grew up poor, and so I'm not, looking to make excuses for Candace Owens or for Republicans or for, white people, because some people will say this, and that's why I say that. I'm simply here to present the facts. Simply present the facts. And I know from growing up in the hood, when someone does something, many times I've seen this happen, they get arrested, or I should say they get killed, I should say. And, their families will be on TV, on the news, crying, as right they should. They love the person, but they'll say some things that aren't even true. They were going to school, they just enrolled in college and they wanted to be, no, they weren't. They were out here robbing people. I know about it. And he robbed the wrong person, and that person came back and killed them, right? And so this is bad because it gives a bad image to young Black and Hispanic kids, right? It takes away the accountability factor. Where's the accountability for putting himself in the situation by first trying to pass off a counterfeit bill, and secondly, by purchasing drugs, third, by trying to stuff those drugs in his mouth so the police wouldn't find them, which is what, honestly, in my opinion, ultimately led to his death. He had an overdose. And I'm going to show you that. And so what we do then as a society is we allow the media to create this because politicians want to utilize this for their own benefits, and other individuals and organizations to generate millions and millions and even billions of dollars like BLM has, perpetuating a lie, creating a statue for a man. There's so many other positive blacks and Hispanics that could have a statue. And I made a comment, you know, and I was kind of half jokingly, but I said, they don't have a statue for Jay-Z. I mean, he has provided jobs for a lot of people, including blacks and Hispanics, and he's made many blacks and Hispanics multimillionaires. That should be celebrated, right? Even if maybe he had a past, you know, growing up, but he changed his life. Or other people you can find, right? But no, they make a statue of George Floyd, a guy that was essentially resisting arrest, tried to hide the fact that he had just purchased drugs by swallowing them and ultimately having an overdose. And that happens. Again, I grew up in the streets. I know drug dealers. I know guys that used to hustle. And when they would have what they call pieces, right? The crack pieces, they would have a handful of them and they run from the police because they don't want the police to get them. And they didn't want to dump them because that's money. So they would swallow them. Or sometimes they didn't have time to dump them. So they would be, in this case, like George Floyd, wrestling with the police, creating some kind of diversion so they can get it in their mouth and swallow it. And what has happened before is that the baggies have opened up inside their stomach and they've had to go to the hospital because they started to overdose. That's happened many times. That's a drug dealer thing, a hustler thing. Or if you're purchasing drugs and you don't want to get caught with it. I knew a guy once that tried to eat weed. That was funny. It wasn't going to work, right? So I want to show you that. I'm going to show you a video of a previous arrest because the video looks exactly similar to the arrest where he ended up losing his life, or where he died. This is from 2019.
Was not a saint. This person was not an angel. Okay, so my producer just... Okay, this is super interesting because he's saying mama again. And obviously I know that throughout the trial, his girlfriend testified that he calls her mama, and the media made such a big deal saying that.
So what she's saying here is that, the video first is showing that he's, doing a similar thing and that he's not cooperating with police. And I always tell people this, just cooperate. Just put your hands up, get out the car, do what they say. I don't care if you're right, because you don't want to end up dead, right? You want to make sure that you make it out of that encounter alive. So just follow directions. All individuals, don't care what color you are, follow directions. Do not give police a hard time. Whether you're innocent or not, fight it in court. You can't fight it on the street there. The police are not the judge or jury. They're simply there to take you in. You deal with it in court, and they're going to take you in by any means necessary. It doesn't matter if you call for mama. And he was saying mama, and the reason why she's making that a point is because the way the media portrayed it was that he was calling out for his mom just before he died. So you had all these mom groups and you had all these, mothers protesting, and they were putting them on the news saying moms all over. Yeah, a man dies while calling for his mom. He was calling for his girlfriend, actually, who he referred to as mama. He actually even had her saved in his cell phone as mama. And she even went and testified on the stand that she was mama. That was her nickname that he gave her. But even if it was his mama, he's a grown man. And if you're committing crimes, mama can't save you. Mama cannot. My mother always told me, right, that if I ever got arrested, she was going to leave me in there. And maybe that's because she felt that she was abandoned by her own family. I don't know, when she got into her thing. But that scared the crap out of me. I said, I don't want to go to jail because my mother's going to leave me in there. And I don't want to stay in there. Right. And whenever I got in trouble, the last person I wanted was mama, because I didn't want her coming and whooping my butt also, So I want to move now to who is Derek, and listen, Candace Owens, you may not like her, and I'm not saying I agree with her all the time. And sometimes I don't like her delivery. I think her delivery takes away sometimes from her message, and she can come off as, insensitive, and kind of arrogant and like, the matter of fact, this is what it is. But some of what she's saying, a lot of what she's saying, I actually agree, especially when it comes to the Black community. right? When she was in front of Congress testifying, and she said to this white woman, how can this white woman that doesn't know anything about being black or growing up in a black community tell me what is the biggest problem in facing blacks in this country, right? And it's definitely not police killing them. It's absolutely not. And I'm not saying that, listen, that hasn't been issues, but that's not the number one problem facing Black America or Hispanics in America. Okay, I will tell you that. I'm going to move on there. I don't want to get into that. I want to get into the video when the police officers approached the vehicle the day that he passed away and what happened there. So he's in the vehicle now. He's with another individual. And I don't know how many people noticed. I didn't notice. I just found out watching this documentary that there was another individual in the vehicle, and it was actually the drug dealer that was selling him the drugs. That's what was going on there. It was a drug transaction in the car after he left the store trying to pass the counterfeit. And that's why he had the drugs on him that he tried to stuff down his mouth, right? And the drug dealer goes to court and, he testifies whatever he said. But one thing he didn't say was that he was selling him drugs, and he pleaded the fifth. He said, I don't want to incriminate myself, during the trial to say what I was doing there, which I think was very valid and needed to be said, because ultimately I believe after watching this and seeing the facts that he passed away from an overdose on fentanyl. That's my opinion based on the facts here.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Ron Martinelli, forensic criminologist and certified medical investigator and police practices expert. Let me just preface this. I have no dog in the fight here, all right? We classically get a lot of officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, but we take them from all sides. So my advocacy is for facts and evidence, not for people or entities. So if the officers are doing what they're supposed to be doing as they were trained to do it, I'm going to tell you. If they're not, I'm also going to tell you that.
What was your assessment of the police behavior in seeing the full video and seeing how things played out?
They make contact with Mr. Floyd, and that is totally appropriate because they're investigating a third person's report of criminality.
Not moving. I'm not doing nothing. Put your hands behind your back then. I'm not doing nothing. Stop resisting, man. Stand up. Please, man. Stand up. Why are you doing me like this? Stand up. Come on. We're trying to get out of the street here so you don't get hit by a car.
So for the officers, what they have to do is they have to begin an investigation to ask him probative questions, seeking more evidence to determine whether a crime has occurred.
All right, what's your name? George. We're here because it sounds like you gave a fake bill to the individuals in there. Yeah.
So once they put the handcuffs on Mr. Floyd should have known, albeit he's under the influence of drugs,
Are you on something right now? No, nothing. Because you acting real erratic.
that he must obey the officer's directions, orders, and commands. He cannot resist arrest.
I hear you, but you are going to face this door right now. Listen up. Stop. I'll do anything, man. Please don't do. Take a seat. I'm going in. I'm going. No, you're not.
And so when Mr. Floyd gets in a car and he claims that he's claustrophobic.
Right. Claustrophobic is exactly what he said.
No. I'm claustrophobic. I'm just claustrophobic.
I think if I was an officer, I'd be saying, wait a minute, you showed up in a car. You wouldn't get in a car if you thought you were claustrophobic. The officers placed him in a position that's referred to as the maximum restraint position. In other words, he's prone, stomach down on the ground.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
So what do you guys think? I mean, to me, he clearly was not cooperating with the police. They were trying to get him into the car for about 8 to 10 minutes, to saying, get in the car. And he kept saying he's claustrophobic. He kept saying, I didn't do anything. He kept saying, mama, he kept saying a bunch of different things, but he was not going into the car. What do you think? I mean, did he do anything wrong? Or are the officers, what they're saying about him resisting correct? And I'm not saying he deserved to die. For one, I want to make that very clear. No one deserved to die. He didn't deserve to die for anything he did that day. Unfortunately, he ended up dead. But again, that was more because of the fentanyl that he took. And again, that's why I believe he was resisting in that way and didn't want to get in. And, saying I was claustrophobic, doing all this stuff, kind of going down to the ground. You hear the officer saying, get up, let's get out the street. I don't want you to get hit by a car. They're obviously concerned with him getting hit by a car. I don't think they wanted to kill him. Right. And so he's also engaged police before. He has priors. So, where I come from again in the hood, when guys have, several arrests, and they're out in the street a lot, police get to know them. They know who they are. They know who they're dealing with, and a lot of times don't know them by name even, right? So there's that kind of like that unusual relationship there, right? That exists, right? So, and he wouldn't get in though. And so was he trying to resist because he wanted to create a diversion to throw drugs into his mouth, right? And I think that's what it was, and that's what he tried to do. They'll show pieces of the fentanyl pills on the floor of the car because he was trying to chew it up and swallow it. And he even says at one point, I took too much drugs. I took in drugs. So,
good morning. We plan to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Mr. Chauvin was anything other than innocent on May 25th of 2020. Mr. Derek Chauvin used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd until the very breath, no, ladies and gentlemen, until the very life were squeezed out of him.
This is talking about the camera angle here. We mostly see the camera angle from the cell phone.
Chief, that from the perspective of Miss Frazier's camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee is on the neck of Mr. Floyd.
Yes.
Would you agree that from the perspective of Officer King's body camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee was more on Mr. Floyd's shoulder blade?
Yes.
They had to have the jury believe that it was a neck restraint, it was the knee on the neck, it was asphyxiation that killed George Floyd. However, there was a ton of evidence that George Floyd consumed a toxic, lethal cocktail of fentanyl and methamphetamine.
Did it appear that Mr. Floyd said, I ate too many drugs?
Yes, it did.
Let's put it in perspective. 3 grains of fentanyl on the head of a lead pencil, enough to kill you, enough to kill me. And so they had to continuously inculcate the public to believe that Derek Chauvin intentionally, premeditatedly murdered George Floyd, and drugs had absolutely nothing to do with it. As Lindsay and the toxicologist presented that awful testimony.
Do you recall describing the level of fentanyl as a fatal level of fentanyl?
I recall describing it in other circumstances. It would be a fatal level, yes, in other circumstances. Had Mr. Floyd been home alone in his locked residence with no evidence of trauma, and the only autopsy finding was that fentanyl level, then yes, I would certify his death as due to fentanyl toxicity.
I know I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Take a seat. I can't breathe. Here, come on out.
The autopsy is generally broken down by, number one, how the body is presented and, what his height and weight is. And then it goes through the neurological system, exterior trauma, interior trauma. But I go right to the cardiovascular system. And there I look at the heart weight. How much does the heart weigh? And then I take a look for key words. I compare the heart weight to the height and weight of the individual, to what the toxicology report says, and I look for certain words or evidence of something called cardiomegaly. Cardiomegaly means an enlarged heart. And if a person has cardiomegaly, their chances of sudden cardiac arrest rise by 150 times, not 150%, 150 times. That is significant. And then we have the whole issue of the police encounter and the basal metabolic rate rising. Think about him being agitated, chaotic, excited, and his heart is pumping, pumping, pumping. There is zero empirical forensic evidence, medical evidence of any biological mechanism, physiological mechanism that would have interfered with George Floyd's ability to get sufficient oxygenated blood up into the brain. There's zero evidence of that.
There was another passenger in the vehicle, and that...
So really quick, did you hear what the medical examiner said? He says, had George Floyd been home alone, he would have said he died of an overdose. But because the police were there and, you know, they had that whole thing where he was supposedly putting his knee on his neck. But if you see there, it was on his shoulder blade, right? Obviously, that angle is not the angle that we were shown over and over. It was the cell phone from the other in front where it looks like it's directly on his neck. And again, you see there, the autopsy report did not state any injuries to the neck. Didn't state any. Said his lip, forehead, obviously his face is on the ground. That's from the street, right? Or maybe something else. But nothing on the neck where it would obviously need to be, injuries would need to be present if that's what killed him. If it was his knee on the neck, putting that much force down for 10 minutes, as they say, that would have had, caused injuries to the neck. It's not easy to just suffocate somebody, right? Like they show in the movies, you have to apply a lot of pressure to where you break bones in the neck. And there was no injuries to the neck, no bruising and nothing around the neck. You saw what the guy said about his heart, how it was enlarged because of the methamphetamine and the fentanyl. And when he says he can't breathe, he was saying that even before he was down on the ground. He was saying it while they had him inside the car halfway in. And that to me tells me, along with everything else that they were saying here, that it's because the fentanyl was kicking in. He had taken it and it caused him to have respiratory problems. Now, the guy here that you see getting out the car, that's the guy that was selling him the fentanyl that he was just buying, that he was trying to swallow real quick so he wouldn't get arrested with it.
That passenger was Mr. Floyd's drug dealer. However, he did not end up providing helpful testimony because of his own criminal liability.
Okay, and why would you not answer those?
I'm fearful of criminal charges going forward. I have open charges that's not settled yet of my personal stuff.
So basically you are invoking your Fifth Amendment right against compelled self-incrimination?
Yes, sir.
There was some evidence that came out of chewed up pills that were found on the floor of the police car. It's very unclear to me why that evidence was not obtained earlier and presented to the jury. But I think if the jury had seen the entire picture, not only of Mr. Floyd's drug dependency, his multiple prior brushes with law enforcement, but his physical characteristics at the time of the incident and his ultimate death. Absent the interaction with the police, he could easily have died with the amount of drugs in his system with no knee on his neck or on his shoulder. And so to me, that would have suggested, if I were on that jury, reasonable doubt, but our system is such that a jury gets to decide that. Now, there were other factors, I think, that polluted the jury's ultimate ruling. You know, ultimately the jury reached its conclusion.
I'm praying the verdict is the right verdict, which is, I think it's overwhelming in my view.
You got to get more confrontational, make sure that they know that we mean business.
I want to see the charge of the arresting officer take place. We are not talking about a split-second decision that was made incorrectly. I can't see coming to a different answer there. Thank you.
Real quickly, have you seen the body camera footage yourself?
No, I have not yet.
The verdict is in the case.
So he was found guilty, sentenced to 22.5 years for the murder of George Floyd. But did you see what I meant about people having an interest when the president of the United States is basically saying he should be found guilty, that's tainting the trial. That's tainting the people's opinion, the public opinion. When you have Maxine Waters saying we need to get in their face and be aggressive, she's encouraging the protests and all the violence that took place, burning down of people's private property, their businesses that had nothing to do with it. Yet none of them went to jail. None of them went and had to go through what the people who protested on January 6th had to go through. And they didn't destroy as much property as the people who protested during BLM. They didn't burn down the Capitol. They didn't steal anything from there. Maybe a little souvenir, trinket being silly. But there were billions of dollars destroyed in these protests. And yet that's okay. They literally took over an entire police precinct and a block in Seattle, and they had it for months. But that's okay. That's not an insurgency. That's not terrorism. I don't understand the way people think in this country anymore. And that is why we're so divided. That is why we are in the state that we are in. And our country is headed for third war. Our economy is headed for disaster. And yet this is what we're doing. We're arguing with each other. Exactly where they want us. Divided. And instead of people saying, I'm going to look for the information myself, I'm going to do the research myself. No, they take what CNN says, what Joe Biden says, what Maxine Waters says. And if that was Donald Trump doing what Maxine Waters did there, they would have a fit, right? That's what they're claiming Donald Trump did to incite January 6th. And that's why he should be guilty. But why is she not being found guilty then? Or being charged with inciting riots and stuff? People died in those BLM protests. And I will always remember the one individual, former police chief who died, who was killed during the BLM protests, a black officer, a black man, former police chief. He was protecting his business and he was killed when people ran into his business, looters, and destroyed it. Yet no one talks about that. No one, right? So folks, you got to wake up. You guys got to start seeing what's going on. You're being played in the media. And whether this guy comes out of jail now, I don't really care. That's not my point. My point is that there's information here that suggests that our media is constantly lying to us. And that's not okay. And that is why people like myself and other podcasts have become bigger and growing. I'm not saying I'm super big, but others have become extremely huge because people are tired of the lies from mainstream media. And then they go and make this guy a martyr. They put a statue of him. And it just does an injustice to my people. Blacks and Hispanics and all Americans. They're my people. Does an injustice to all of us because we're fighting each other. And the politicians are the ones that are benefiting, that are winning. Right? And BLMs and other people who actually started BLM that are becoming richer and richer while doing nothing for the communities that they said they're fighting for. It's like our politicians here that say, I went up to assembly and I got all this money for the Yonkers public schools, yet they're falling apart. Yet the transportation is dropping kids off at the wrong bus stop. There's no monitors. Old classrooms are overcrowded. What are they really doing? What are they really doing? It's a bunch of BS that we get sold all the time. And so I wanted to just show that that's another like half hour or 40 minutes of this documentary, but I didn't want to, show that. You can watch it on that. I suggest you do it because it gives information there that will tell you exactly what happened. Okay. And this is not about black. This is not about white. This is just about an unfortunate situation. A man who committed or attempted to commit a crime by passing a counterfeit bill at a store, went and committed another crime by purchasing fentanyl, and when he was approached by the police, he resisted arrest. He attempted to swallow all the drugs he had, which ultimately enlarged his heart and caused him to have trouble breathing, which is what fentanyl does and how people die. Their respiratory system just shuts down. And that's ultimately what was happening to him. And it had nothing to do with the guy's knee on his neck. He had no injuries on his neck. Right? So and it's not about defending this guy. It's about the truth. It's about the truth. And knowing what the truth is and not having people believe a lie. And people going out there and protesting, and it's just not right. You guys got to get this information correct, man. I debate with some people online, and you guys are just totally off, man. Just completely off. Having the facts, just don't have them. So So anyway, I'm gonna be on tonight with. I might ask Anthony DiMaggio about this as a police officer, right? And I think he might have agreed. He made a comment saying that it was a guy's knee on his neck for 10 minutes. But I said, did you see the other angle from the body cam? It clearly shows his knee was on his shoulder blade, and all the other evidence that is presented there, facts, show that he died of an overdose of fentanyl, which is a huge problem and what we really should be all getting together to discuss, because it's hurting people right here in Yonkers. And I saw that the Yonkers Voice had a mother who lost her 15-year-old daughter here in Yonkers to a fentanyl overdose when she was given a fake pill. I did reach out to the mom. I told her maybe we should come on the show and we can talk about that as well. I did a podcast as well on it and the overdose problem that's happening here in the city of Yonkers. And it's a huge problem. And that's ultimately what happened in the George Floyd case. And it's unfortunate because a lot of lives were destroyed. George Floyd lost his life. That police officer went to jail for 22 years, where he's now locked up for 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. The family of George Floyd, the family of the officer, the mom, I felt bad for her, and everybody said good things about him, just as they said good things about George Floyd. So it's unfortunate, right? But if we continue to believe the lies, we're never going to be able to fix the problems that we have in this country. So it's like drug addiction. You have to admit that the problem exists first in order to fix the problem, right? So that's what I try to do here on Basement Politics. I try to provide the truth and just get people to think. Right? I'm not trying to convince you can believe what you want, but hopefully that I presented some information there that'll just at least get you to think. I'm Freddie Vasquez. Join me tonight as I have Anthony DiMaggio back on. By the way, I saw Shanae. Shanae, did you see me? I know you saw me, girl. She was in her city car, looking like a star. In her city car. Shanae Williams, District 1, District 1, District 1. I saw her in her city car. She was looking like a star. She had a police badge on the windshield. What does that mean, Shanae? Are you getting out of tickets? Is that what it's for? Come on, Shanae. Can I see? Anyway, I saw Shanae Williams today driving on Main Street. She was turning in. She looked at me. I know she saw me. I stopped at the store there. She was in her city car. You can tell by the plate. You can tell by the make. And then she had a little those police, badge things that people put on the windshield. I think as they, I don't know, or maybe do they all get that and they put on their windshield? I don't know. Anyway, Shanae, I hope you were going to help some of your constituents, like the mother of 4 who's living with mold in your district. I hope that's where you were rushing off to. Anyway, folks, I'm Freddie Vasquez. I'm up out of here. Join me tonight for Anthony DiMaggio. Shout out to Yonkers Police.
Freddie wins. Fatality.
I was raised in housing. I don't think you were.
I want to end this quick because I'm greedy and I want somebody butter chicken.
In another one, Mr. Rubo lied to me. And I don't vote for a person that lied to me.
Freddie
Thank you very much.
Fatality.